This is Nancy and Andy at Yankton Thrive. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Coffee with the Candidates. We have Lauren and Nelson with us here today, and she is running in the June 4th, 2024 legislative primary for the South Dakota State Senate. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So why don't you go ahead and start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Lauren Nelson. I am running for Senate for District 18. I grew up on a family farm up by Brookings, a little town called Sinai, South Dakota. Some people have heard of it, some haven't. And I went to SDSU and I got my MRS degree at SDSU. Some people don't know what that means. It means my Mrs. degree. I met David Nelson when I was going to school up there. And we got married, and 30 years later, we have been here in Yankton, South Dakota. We have 3 children, Mary, Beatrice, and Fred. They're all adults. We'll be empty nesters next year. So what that brings, we'll see what happens there. Currently, I am a teacher. I've been teaching for 20 plus years. The other night I was speaking with some people, and one of my kindergarten students from Gave-O-Volin was there. And so I asked him, I said, how old are you? And he said 32. And I said, yeah, I've been teaching for a while because I was his kindergarten teacher, so it was fun to reconnect with him. I'm currently teaching at Missouri Valley Christian Academy here in Yankton. It's a school which I co-founded back in 2008, and I've been there ever since. Currently, I am on the Planning and Zoning Board for Yankton County, and with that committee, I was able to serve on the Solar Task Force and the Wind Task Force, which just finished up here last week. And also too, I am the treasurer for the Yankton County Sharpshooters, which has been fun to work with those gentlemen in that group.
So can you tell us what separates you from the other candidate?
Thinking about this question and pondering, there's a lot of things I could say, but I think I'm going to wrap it up pretty quickly here, pretty shortly. New face, new choice for District 18.
So funding public education is the state's responsibility. What are your thoughts on how we continue to create outstanding learning environments for our youth?
First of all, I'd have to ask, what do you mean by outstanding? Because I think you could be talking about test scores, you could be talking about teacher qualifications, parent engagement, and I think all of those are important. The thing about it is when you talk about test scores, if you look at the test scores across South Dakota, there's a lot of students, I guess around 50% are not even proficient in reading, and less than 50% are proficient in math. And so when you look at that, it's hard to say outstanding. I think a better question would be to say, how do we fund classrooms that are creative, classrooms that are positive, and classrooms that are challenging here in South Dakota? And my answer would be funding our classrooms and funding our teachers. If you look at the qualifications of the teachers here in Yankton, especially, because I know quite a few of them, they have their masters in administration, they have their masters in curriculum development and reading specialist. Why is peer thinking that they know what's best for the students? When you have teachers and administrators so well qualified and so committed to their jobs, let's take the rules and regulations from peer and give those back. Give the teachers in the classrooms and the administrators the freedom to do what is best for their kids in their schools. They know what's best. They know what works. And so I really do believe it needs to go back to our schools, local control. Also too, being involved with a Christian school, as a District 18 Senator, I will represent all families, whether your kids go to public school, whether they go to Christian school, or whether they go to homeschool. I will listen to all parents. I will have an ear for them and represent them in peer.
So how would you support making the temporary, would you support making the temporary sales tax state reduction permanent?
Definitely. Anytime you can put money back in the pockets of the taxpayers and the people of the state in this district, I am for it. So I am for cutting taxes wherever it may be.
So there are 2 ballot measures circulating that the state cannot tax the sale of anything sold for human consumption except for alcohol and prepared foods. Both say municipalities may continue to impose these taxes, but there is definitely a question about how that would work. Sales tax streamlining laws that allow us to collect sales tax on remote sales say that the state and municipalities have to have the same base. So they have to tax the same items. They do not have to tax at the same rate. So the state can tax at 4% and the cities at 2%. If either of these measures pass, it would take legislative or court action to keep food in the base, but have the state rate set at 0, leaving municipalities' sales tax in place. First, do you support eliminating the tax on consumables? And if this is passed, would you support legislative action allowing cities to keep their base on consumables?
And I don't know who made up these questions and things, but my first reaction to that question is I have no idea what you just said. And I have my master's from USD in administration. And I think, this question, I think, is a perfect example of what is wrong in Pierre and why I am running. If I'm sitting here and I am confused by that question, I can't imagine how the people of District 18 in the state, the average person can understand what is going on. And I think this is what's wrong with Pierre and what's typical with Pierre. We make things so complicated, we make things so hard to understand that the voters, the people, become disengaged from what's going on. And when the voters become disengaged, that allows Pierre to do whatever they feel what they would like to do. And so I think it's important and why I'm running is to go to Pierre and make things that are not as complicated or easier to understand for the people. I mean, I think what you're asking me there in that question is you're asking me, do I support a tax cut? Yes, I do. Do I believe that the people in our municipalities like Yankton and other cities have the right to set their taxes? Yes, because I do believe in local control. They know what's best.
So as a clarification, these ballot measures are not created by Pierre. They are from citizen groups that are circulating those to try and get them on the ballot. And essentially there's some legal challenges of if they repeal it at the state level, can the city still tax it if the state doesn't tax it? And that would be a huge hit to the local tax base if that tax is withdrawn. So that's why kind of laying the foundation for the question was a little bit long.
Right, it is very long, and I understand that, but I have been watching the legislature now for many years, and that's one of the things that I keep hearing over and over with people is the fact that, I will tell them, you need to look at this bill, you need to read this bill, and they'll come back and they will say, I don't understand. And so it's like, having to explain to them what this is all about and stuff. And the thing about it is, and a lot of people will say, I just don't understand, and so forget about it. I don't care. Whatever they're going to do, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. And so I think this is is an example of what is going on in Pierre. And I am for local control. I am for cutting taxes, and that's my stance, on that.
So property rights, there's a tremendous dialogue across South Dakota regarding personal property rights when it comes to large economic development projects. Share some of your thoughts with the viewing audience so they better understand your views and what you would support so South Dakota can continue to bring large-scale projects into the state.
First thing I would have to say is the fact that large economic development projects, I don't think all large economic development projects are good for our state. We already have a low unemployment rate. Where are the workers going to come from? And I think when you bring projects in like that, those workers are just coming from other businesses and small businesses, probably especially, and those business owners are having a hard time finding workers. And then also too with economic development, what I've seen out of Pierre the last couple years is the fact that economic development means taking my taxes, running it through Pierre, and then diverting it to special groups or special interests for them to spend. That's redistribution of wealth. And so I believe we should, cut taxes and let people keep that money in their pockets and spend how they wish within the community. To me, that's true economic development. And also too, true economic development shouldn't require, again, going back to, government intervention. Again, true economic development is people keeping money in their pocket and spending it how they want to. As far as property rights, that is one of the is one of the staples of our country. How many years ago I did research on my ancestors who came from Denmark, and how fascinating that was. They came here for opportunity. They came here to own land. And I just don't think it's right for Pierre to be giving land and allowing, private entities to have those rights and have that access to private property. Private property is sacred. It's something that we need to fight for and we need to keep.
So it's nothing new that the 66 counties in South Dakota are struggling financially. The summer study in 2023 brought forward several ideas. What do you think will create a positive impact for the county budgets?
That question there too, I just, thinking about that originally, my first thoughts is the fact that, it's hard to imagine that all 66 counties are struggling. I've been to Sioux Falls, I've been to Pennington, I've been to Lincoln County, and they look like they're doing, pretty well. So my first concern is the fact that we are saying all 66 are struggling. What that makes me believe is that Pierre or somebody is going to use a broad brush to, do something that requires all 66 counties and I think that's wrong because each county is different. Yankton is very different from Lincoln, very different from, Brookings, very, different from Pennington. And so I think it's important to remember that each county has challenges, and I think it's not a one size fits all for a solution. Also too, with that question, for me thinking is the fact that I have been at many of the county commission meetings. Last couple of years I've sat on many of them and have learned quite a bit from them. And one of the things that you hear over and over again from the county commissioners is the fact of the state mandates. Last year when I sat in on the budget meetings last July, you listen to them and it's like, yep, we have to fund this because it's state mandated, so we have to. And I know people come in and say, why are you funding this? Well, we have to because it's state mandated. And I think one thing that Pierre can do is to say, hey, one, if we make these state mandates requirement, let's provide the money. Or if we're not going to provide the money, then let's say, do we really need to be putting this burden on our counties? And so that's something that can help our counties out, is just looking at those state mandates and saying, are they necessary? The last thing too is just looking at budgets. It's no different than a family saying, we're struggling, where are some things that we can cut out? And I think our counties too can do that as well. Looking at our budgets and saying, hey, how can we trim some things or move the money around and be able to save some money that way.
So share your thoughts on the successes or challenges with Medicaid expansion.
I was paying attention 2 years ago to when that was going to be voted upon, and just the doomsday numbers that we were going to hear. We were going to hear how many people are going to go enroll and how much it was going to cost the state of South Dakota. And thankfully, those numbers haven't come to fruition yet. And so one thing that success is the fact that South Dakotans are working. They're getting their health care either through their worker or privately. And so I applaud the people of South Dakota and getting out there and working. Challenges would be, anybody that's gone to the grocery store lately and bought groceries. It's quite expensive, and you look at your cart and there's not much there. And so if you have inflation continuing to go as it is, which means, again, less money in people's pockets, and it might require some families to look for assistance when it comes to their health care. Also, too, what's going on with our southern border, with the people coming across, how are they going to get their health care? And is that going to be one of the avenues coming up here for them for their health care? So we'll see what happens.
So workforce is a continuing challenge in South Dakota with unemployment around 2% and such a large percentage of both parents working, especially here in District 18. What ideas do you have for increasing our workforce so we can continue to support our key industries, agriculture, manufacturing, tourism, and healthcare?
Yeah, again, I applaud 2%. That is phenomenal. Phenomenal, and just the people of South Dakota are hard workers. Kind of going off sideways here a little bit, but my brother in the Marine Corps would train Marines from all over the country, and he could immediately tell, who was from the Midwest, was from North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas. And so I think that it shows here with our unemployment rate. Again, getting workers here, again, lower taxes, making it invitable for people to come and live here. Because again, if we have 2% unemployment, they either got to come from another state, or we got to, keep our children here, as they grow up. And so, again, cutting taxes, letting people keep money in their own pockets, quality of living. What amenities do we have here in South Dakota for young families? Good schools, making sure we have good roads, things like that. And so that's very important to keep families here. I pray that one of my children will come back home and take over the family farm and continue on the legacy of the Nelson farm. But again, we just have to have those opportunities here so that other places aren't as attractive than being right here at home.
So what are your thoughts on automation and how that might impact some of our key industries?
Automation. Automation, huge. I mean, huge. And that's, you see that. And again, you look at the fact that, you have the baby boomers, and that's the thing. All these baby boomers that were working at one time now are retiring, and there's not as many kids, their generation or the next generation coming up. And so automation is huge. If we want to continue the trajectory we've been on as a country for all these years, there's going to have to be more automation, more high-paid, skilled jobs to deal with that. I mean, look at farming. I think my husband spends more time getting the computers on the tractors, ready to go than he does the planter or anything else. And so, I think it's important because of the fact that we have less workers coming up through up through the pike, but also making sure that they're trained to deal with that automation and deal with computers. And we all know computers are not always working right, and so we need people to be able to fix them. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So childcare is another issue important to families. The Department of Social Services has a program to support low-income families offset the cost of childcare, but a low percentage of families utilize this program. In Yankton, it's actually only 4% of the eligible families. So in Yankton, our reports also show a very high demand specifically for children, or childcare, for infants under the age of 1. And there is no one answer that will solve this issue, but in your opinion, what can be done to support families having adequate access to childcare?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is I just had a conversation probably 3 weeks ago with another lady, and we're just talking about some things, and her daughter used to be in childcare, but again, up in Sioux Falls, and she was a daycare provider and has gotten out of it. And I asked her, I said, well, why? And she said it was because of the regulations that they have to jump through to be able to be certified through the state. And so, she had said that her daughter, she's spending the whole day taking care of children, trying to build relationships with, parents and letting them know what's going on, and then having to deal with the regulations, peer and stuff. So I think one of the things that we could do is, again, looking at those regulations that are required by peer. Are they necessary? Are they, something that is really needed for somebody to have whether it's a standalone business or an in-home daycare. So I think that's probably, the first thing that we could probably look at as a solution. Second thing is to that program that you're talking about. I remember them talking about that at the Cracker Barrel. And, it is amazing that, that low number of people that are utilizing it. And so I think it's going back to and saying, okay, why? Why are they not utilizing it? Is it, information? Do we need to get the word out? Do we, need to, not sure what the income level is. Do we need to adjust that for these young families? And so I think there's probably a couple things you could look at to see if that would help families utilize that program a lot more. And also too, and I don't know what happened, but I remember when I first started working, I didn't have any kids yet, but started working, and there was a lot of businesses that had their daycares in their businesses. And I don't know what happened. At the time I didn't have kids, so I didn't have to worry about that. But what happened to, business saying, hey, we have all these moms, working here. What can we do to, provide a daycare for these moms so they don't have to worry about, shuffling kids around. They can just come to work, drop their child off at daycare, and go to work. Interesting story. My sister, she teaches up up by Brookings. There is a teacher, a young teacher, mom. She drives 20 miles one way to drop her child off at daycare, and goes back to the same town to work, and then does that same thing after school. So it shows that there's something needs to give here. Something needs to change if we're going to continue to have young moms especially in the workforce.
Well, Yankton Thrive was lucky enough to receive one of the planning grants from the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and we will be releasing our information on April 24th with the survey reports coming out, which will actually answer some of the questions that you brought up of why are not people utilizing the program. And so I don't want to go too much in depth during your interview, but I just want to let people know that will be available on our website. And we want people to participate in the public meetings that we'll be having, talking about that information and talking about solutions.
Yeah, I remember, back, and this was the 90s when I was first working, I remember daycares advertising saying, we have openings, bring your child, and that has really changed. So yeah, something has happened over the years, and it's got to get figured out.
Yes, absolutely. So are there any topics that we did not cover today that you would like to share with the viewing audience?
Yeah, the thing that, because it's what pushed me into this race, is SB 201. And again, if people don't know which surprises me because SB 201 has heard a lot lately. It's the carbon solutions. It's the landowners' Bill of Rights, and that's what pushed me into this race and why I decided to run for Senate against Senator Hunoff, and the fact that she did vote for it every time it came to the floor. And again, going back to property rights, sacred. We have got to make sure that we as legislators are protecting the personal property rights of individuals, and then also to local control. Sitting on the Wind Task Force and the Solar Task Force, me and my committee members spent so much time, every week, 2 hours every week, and plus it didn't even cover how much time we researched and trying to make sure that what we put in place as an ordinance was best for Yankton County. And to think that if that bill does become law, that all that will be taken away, and all that control and all that things that we're the decision on what's going to happen in your county is going to be given to peer. One thing I really appreciate now is the fact that if I have something going on that I don't like in my county, whether it's pipelines or solar farms or anything like that, I talk to my neighbor, I go down to the commission meetings the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of the month, and I express my feelings. And if SB 201 comes to fruition, that's gone. And it's going to be, we have to go to peer. And again, if it goes to peer, it's going to be hard to get heard. And again, I believe best government is that which is closest to the people.
Well, Lauren, thank you for joining us here today. And as a reminder, to the viewing audience, on Thrive's website, yanktonsd.com, we will have an election page that will list all of the forums that we are hosting, as well as the local Republican Party is hosting, and it will have voter information of locations of where you can vote within District 18. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.